bronze blade of Xaphos bites into the dust of Troy, and the world begins to scream. You stand amidst the smoke of a city that was once the jewel of the East, but now it is a charnel house, a monument to a single golden mistake. Ahead of you, the great King Agamemnon counts his gold, while the widows of Priam wail in the ruins. The war is won, but the air is thick with the scent of gods who have been insulted and a sea that demands a blood price for every mile of the journey back. Can a man ever truly leave the battlefield? Or does the war simply follow him across the waves until there is nothing left but salt and bone? The tragedy did not begin with a sword stroke. It began with an apple. Long before the walls of Troy felt the weight of 1,000 ships, there was a wedding on the heights of Pelion, where the seeds of ruin were sown. The goddess Eris, unwanted and uninvited, cast a single golden fruit into the feast, a prize inscribed for the most beautiful. It was a forensic trigger, a catalyst that turned the vanity of Olympus into the slaughter of men. The choice fell to Paris, a prince of Troy, who traded the peace of his people for the touch of Helen. In that moment, the chain of causality was forged in iron. The oath of Tyndareus was invoked, and every king of Greece was bound by blood to reclaim what had been stolen, launching a decade of fire that would consume the youth of a generation. Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, never wanted this war. He knew the cost of glory long before he ever set foot on the Scamandrian plain. He was a man of the hearth, a man of clever words and deep roots, yet the tide of fate is indifferent to the desires of the wise. He tried to feign madness, sowing his fields with salt to escape the summons, but the recruiters were more cunning than he. They placed his infant son, Telemachus, before the plow, forcing the father to reveal his sanity to save his child. It was the first of many sacrifices. Odysseus surrendered his peace for his son's life, committing himself to a journey that would strip him of everything but his name. Beside him stood Achilles, the storm-born warrior who chose a short, blazing life over a long-forgotten one. Two men, two paths, one destination, the walls of a city that refused to fall. The strategy was simple: total attrition. For 9 years, the Achaeans hammered against the gates of Troy, their ships rotting on the sand and their hearts turning to stone. Odysseus became the architect of the camp's survival, the one who brokered peace between egos and stole the palladium from the city's heart. He prepared for the end, not with prayers for mercy, but with the cold calculation of a man who understood that if Troy would not break, it must be deceived. He gathered the finest wood from the slopes of Mount Ida, instructing the builders to fashion a hollow monument of peace. As he armed himself for the final night, he whispered a truth that would echo through the ages. The spear may win the day, but the mind wins the war. He carried with him a small carved token of his wife, Penelope, a scrap of olive wood that smelled of home. The threshold was crossed when the wooden horse entered the Scaean gate. The Trojans, blinded by the hope of peace, dragged their own destruction into the center of their sanctuary. As the moon rose, the belly of the beast opened. Odysseus was the first to drop from the darkness, his sandals hitting the stone with a sound like a heartbeat. The time for talk was over. The path to the palace was open, and the fire was ready to be lit. The city was murdered in its sleep. The Trojans awake to the smell of burning cedar and the taste of their own blood. Odysseus moves through the chaos like a shadow, his eyes fixed on the horizon even as he strikes. He sees the fall of Priam, the desecration of the altars, and the shadow of the gods retreating in disgust. The struggle is no longer for Helen, it is for survival. Short, sharp, brutal. The sword rises, the throat opens, the city falls. But as the flames reach the clouds, the wind shifts. The sea, once the Greeks' highway to glory, now turns into a churning wall of grey. The gods have seen the cruelty of the victors, and the forensic chain of causality demands a new link, a decade of wandering for the man who thought he was clever enough to outrun his own shadow. The struggle shifts from the mud of Troy to the salt spray of the Mediterranean. Odysseus finds his fleet scattered by a divine gale, his original plan of a swift return dissolving into a nightmare of monsters and mist. He is forced to adapt, turning from a king into a beggar, from a warrior into a ghost. At the island of the Cyclops, his bravado nearly ends him. He blinds the son of Poseidon, but in his pride, he shouts his true name across the water, sealing his fate. The sea becomes his prison. One by one, his ships are crushed. One by one, his men are devoured by the hunger of the deep. The iron resolve of the war is replaced by the grim endurance of the survivor. Stone becomes his bed, and the sound of waves becomes his only companion. In the darkness of the cave, a revelation takes hold. Odysseus realizes that the war did not end when Troy burned. It merely changed its form. The struggle laid bare his deepest vulnerability, his need to be known, his hunger for undying fame. He understood that to survive, he had to become nobody. He had to shed the skin of the conqueror and embrace the humility of the shipwrecked. This realization changes everything. The Odyssey is no longer a travelogue, it is a purgatory. He is being stripped of his ego, his title, and his strength, until only the core of the man remains. The victory at Troy was Pyrrhic. The real win is the ability to remember who he was before the first ship sailed. The immediate conflict ends not with a grand battle, but with a quiet footfall on the sands of Ithaca. Odysseus returns to a home that does not recognize him, a king in the rags of a wanderer. He sees the suitors devouring his estate, a reflection of the same greed that fueled the Trojan War. He touches the old olive wood token, now worn smooth by 20 years of salt water. The symbol of his home is the only thing that survived the fire and the flood. He is home, but he is a stranger to his own halls. He is a man who has died 1,000 deaths and must now kill once more to claim his life. The aftermath is a cold, grey dawn in the great hall of Ithaca. The suitors lie in heaps, their blood mixing with the spilled wine, a final echo of the carnage at Troy. The servants move in silence, scrubbing the stones, their faces pale with the shock of the king's return. The witnesses see not a hero, but a ghost who has finally stopped running. There are no banners, no songs of triumph, only the heavy breathing of an old man. The air smells of ozone and wet wool. The war has finally, mercifully, run out of breath. The cost is etched into every line of Odysseus's face. He has lost his youth, his friends, and the prime of his life to a quarrel over a golden apple. He stands in his garden, his hands calloused and his heart heavy with the memory of those who didn't make it. Achilles, Ajax, Patroclus, men who are now nothing but shadows. He has achieved what no other Greek could. He survived, but the price was the world he left behind. He carries the burden of the chain of causality, knowing that his own choices were the very things that kept him from his bed. What truly carried him through was not the strength of his arm, but the refusal to yield. He chose to endure when it was easier to drown. The lesson is found in the dirt of Ithaca, that the greatest hero is not the one who dies for glory, but the one who lives for the return. The legacy of Troy is a poison, and his son must soon decide if he will be the man his father was. Walk with us through the old stories. Subscribe to Saga Weaver, where ancient warriors face impossible choices.